Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside 60 Days, the after-show discussion that goes behind the scenes of the A&E TV show set in the Clark County Jail. The show, called 60 Days In, follows 7 innocent participants who volunteered to go undercover in the jail for 2 months. In last night's episode, viewers watched as the first of the undercover inmates exited the show early after being attacked by an actual inmate. Meanwhile, Zach and Isaiah unexpectedly moved to an area where the jail reportedly has the most problems. To talk about last night's episode, I'm joined by Jennifer Ortiz, a criminal justice professor at IUS, and Clark County Jail Commander Major Sam Beard. This week, we also have Reverend Richard Johnson from Christian Formation Ministries, a faith-based organization that serves people going through the criminal justice system. My name is Claire Munn. I am the digital editor for the News and Tribune and will be your temporary host for today's episode. Our regular host, Elizabeth DePompe, public safety reporter for the News and Tribune, will be back next week. Welcome and thank you all for being here today. Reverend, tell us briefly about the work you do in the jails and the prisons and the program you run outside of the jail.
Well, most of our work is done outside the prisons and jails these days. We have volunteers and community chaplains active in 2 local facilities, Floyd County Jail, and I'm also the volunteer chaplain at Henryville Correctional. We work with inmates through our successful reentry program to help them make a successful transition back to free society. We started My Club, which we work with the children of inmates who have a very high probability of following their parents into the same lifestyle. And My Family, which works with the whole family. We have 3 generations of 2 families we're working with now to help them deal with the issues that keep the drama going.
Well, what do you think about the show so far? Is there anything interesting you've learned or anything you've been surprised by?
Well, it's been probably almost 10 years since I've been inside Clark County Jail. In fact, I used to go into D-Pod to do a Bible study with a group of people. It's a lot more crowded than it was. And it seems, no offense, but it seems a little dirtier too. As far as the show goes, I have to admit I'm a little bit ambivalent about shows that tend to exploit people in pain. That's the pastor side of me, but obviously it's being edited for drama and so forth and so on, because that's what TV is. But overall, I'm enjoying the show in some weird way.
Well, last night we did see that Jeff ended up leaving the show after being attacked by another inmate. A lot of social media reaction on there. Haley Jackie on Twitter asked, if you see the camera that Ricky attacks Jeff, why no officers come in? Major Beard, what happened there exactly?
Well, number one, I'd like to intervene on one issue. Ricky is mentally ill. And the mental illness problem is really a jail problem, because now we incarcerate more mentally ill people than we ever did before. I just want to address that issue. Why didn't officers react? There's 5 sections in there that 2 officers have got to take care of. It comes back to manpower. There's 5 sections. Pod 3 was built for 3 men or women, 3 officers to oversee. We have 2. We have a shortage of staff, which cuts down on reaction time. Not making any excuses. That's just the way it is. And the older camera system, you see the guy going over there, but you got to view that from the pod office. And if they're out interacting with other sections, they're not going to be able to view it.
Right. Well, also during that clip, we see the producers come in and talk to some of the inmates, and they seem to have kind of this inmate code where they don't want to admit what happened. Jennifer, do you see that as something that's predominant in a lot of jails across the area?
Well, first, just to touch on something that the Major said, because I think it's a really important point. What's happened in our country is we've made jails into our new mental asylums. And we have the government has systematically defunded mental health treatment, mental institutions. What they've done is stick all of these individuals who are schizophrenic, bipolar, have all of these other issues, place them in corrections, and somehow ask correctional officers to be able to properly manage a group they're not trained to actually handle. Our correctional staff and our correctional officers, the correctional system, they're not psychiatrists. They're not trained for this. And I think it's unfair really to put the burden on the correctional officers when they're being asked to handle something they shouldn't be handling to begin with, just because we have become obsessed with incarceration. Now, to speak to your question about the inmate code is very real. And one of the key concepts of the inmate code is you don't snitch, right? Snitches get hurt in jail and in prison. And I think it's common across all facilities that almost no one will tell anyone what has happened. A guy will have his face slashed open and say he has no idea who did that to him when he faced the person face to face and saw them and knew who it was and still won't say anything.
Well, this is a question kind of for all of you. What do you think? Did Jeff learn anything from being in jail, or was the program able to learn anything from him being in there?
Well, I think Jeff realized that I'm not really sure if he's ready for corrections. I'm not really sure if he's ready to take on that type of position. I think just the same way that the inmates took advantage of him as an inmate, they will very likely take advantage of him as a correctional officer. Not everyone is fit to be a correctional officer, and I don't think he is fit to be one. One thing I did like is when he was in the van at the end, he said something along the lines of, there are a lot of good people in there who just need help, and jail is not the place for them to get that help.
Reverend, is that something that you agree with?
I completely agree with that. The mental health issue is huge. I'm not up to date on the numbers, but the last time I looked years ago, 40% of the prison population had some kind of mental health issue. I'm sure it's higher now. Yeah, Jeff, I hope he realizes he's probably better off as a mall cop. He's got that one locked down, but not to come into a correctional environment based on what I saw on the TV show.
I really don't know where Jeff was raised. It's none of my business, but he seems to live a sheltered life and is out of touch with reality. I don't even know that he's a great mall security officer. I can't see him stopping, but that's another subject. Back to the mental illness thing, you got to know that the drug culture is influencing mental illness. These people get on this spice, they get on Suboxone, they get on meth, and it causes what we call a dual diagnosis. They got a drug addiction, which turns into a mental illness. And just like Ms. Ortiz said, we've closed down state hospitals and turned the jail into those institutions.
Well, it's kind of switching over to Tammy. We've seen her struggle a lot, and in this episode, her wife actually comes to visit her, and she kind of breaks down. How do you think that's going to affect her going forward into the next episode?
Well, I think what Tammy's experiencing is something very real, and we would call it prisonization. Inmates enter prison, and they're used to our society and our norms and our values. They enter prison, and they have to really adapt to a whole new set of norms and values. And what happens during prisonization is they lose sight of reality. They lose sight of the world outside. And I think Tammy, for a time, lost sight of reality and the world outside of those walls. And I think it was really good to bring her wife in, because her wife grounded her again. Okay, this is real. This is my real life. This is what I'm going to go home with. And I think that having seen her wife, even for that short period of time, is going to help her be able to make it through, because it just gave her a reality check.
Reverend, do you think that's important for the participants to have their family members come in to help ground them?
I think absolutely. The kind of stress that Tammy was under, in my experience, tends to reveal the underlying emotional pain and issues that they haven't resolved yet. And clearly, in my opinion, that's what's happened to Tammy. That she was going off the deep end emotionally because of all of this unresolved stuff. You know, just the hints that she left out there about, you know, her childhood and so forth. And you know, whenever I go to Henryville, I can feel. I mean, we have up to 168 men all in pain up there. It doesn't change the fact that they've broken the law, but just the same empathy requires that you be aware of it. And so, when I look at her, that's what I see more than anything. So I think it probably saved her sanity that she had that opportunity.
Well, one viewer on Twitter asked, do any of the producers feel like saying that a participant doesn't seem to be mentally up to par? Do you think it should be up to the producers to say, I don't think you're emotionally stable to be here and pull them out, or is that kind of more up to the participant themselves?
Well, I think it's a combination of all of them, and we have to also include the fact that Maples and Sheriff Knoll also played a role, because they could at any point pull out a participant if they felt the person wasn't okay, because they are more aware of what happens inside of a jail and the signs of an inmate who needs help. So I think it's a combination of did the Clark County staff think that person needed to be taken out? Did the producer think the person needed to be taken out? But also, does the person think that they need to be taken out? And I think the way the show was structured, any one of those three could have pulled any participant out at any time.
Major Beard, what do you think?
Well, Sheriff Knoll was super involved in this, because really to do something like this as sheriff, not only you put your reputation on the line, you put your vocation on the line. And he was going to make sure that, he was trying to make sure that no catastrophe would happen. You know what I'm saying? So he was in tune with it. Maples was in tune with it. From my part, I was in tune with the security aspect. You know, and A&E was, they had a little bit involved in security, but they were mostly there for the entertainment aspect. So one side was entertainment, show, the other side was business. I tend to lean more to the business side of it.
Well, also in the episode, we see Zach and Isaiah get moved from C-Pod into D-Pod. Major Beard, can you tell us a little bit about the differences between the two pods? And
The difference is classification level. You know, Pod 3 is broken up into classification levels, as a whole jail is. So, but we did this for intel. You know, we didn't, after Robert was pulled out of 3D, then Jeff, we needed somebody in there for intel. And that's where the decision come in.
What kind of problems highlighted in this episode has been seen kind of by your staff?
Well, what was seen by me is, you know, we need to really be cautious, and we try to take people that are mentally ill, get them stabilized on medication, and then put them out in the general population. Because eventually we're going to have to stabilize them and they're going to get released. So we have to step them down. But after they get released, we need to keep a closer eye on them people, if they're taking their medication, how they're reacting, and things like that. Another thing we need to observe, and we've really, since this show's been over, the sheriff sat down with us and he had like 18 points he wanted to, I'm on about the 15th thing we need to fix, okay? And from watching it, it sort of gives me a bird's eye view, this program, on what to fix and what not. So, and we're making major adjustments in this jail.
Well, one of the differences between C and D pod, it seemed, was that in D pod there are multiple pod bosses. Someone wanted to know, how do you become a pod boss exactly?
Well, your reputation usually makes you become if you've been to prison for a while, like you've seen in C. Roby's been in prison forever. His earliest possible release date from the Department of Corrections right now is 2031. So he's got the advantage, because he's the guy everybody looks like this. And again, Jennifer, like I said in the first program, 3D is an inmate section, 3C is a convict section. It's, you know, in a convict section, everything appears to be organized. In an inmate section, there's power conflict. You know, if you've seen the fight in 3D last night, you got one guy, DeAndre, that's ordered by the two, a clique, a gang, whatever you want to call it, they ordered to collect a debt. But you got other people in there trying to get the same type of power. So there's always conflict. 3C is more laid out.
Yeah, and we call that governance. It's just inmate governance. And Roby is like a dictator in a sense, right? He is governing that pod as, I am the boss and everything will go through me. And because of it, whether we want any inmate to have that power is a completely different discussion, but because he holds all the power, there is order, right? There's some type of, I call it organized chaos. You go into D-Pod and there is this power struggle. There is no one leadership, right? It's I guess it's a great analogy for our government, right? We have these three bodies and nobody works with each other, nobody agrees, and nothing gets done, and it's kind of chaotic, and that's exactly what we're seeing inside of D-Pod.
Well, last question that we have is, what are you all looking forward to most, or what do you guys expect in the next episode? Reverend, I'll start with you.
I don't know. I don't know what to expect, so I'm just kind of, I DVR it because Thursday night's my night at the prison, so I watch it when I get home. So I have no idea what's coming.
Major Beard?
I sort of know what's coming, but my key thing is, how will Robert do when he goes back into population? Will the difference between D and C help him out? Probably. And Maples talks to him at the end of the show and sort of, hey, you need to get your head out of your butt. This is real life stuff. Now, well, a guy that's with as big as ego, and Robert's got a big ego, will he listen? We'll see.
I'm interested to see what happens to Robert, because I don't think Roby is going to tolerate his type of kind of erratic behavior, because again, he wants order in that pod. I'm also interested to see what happens with Isaiah, because he seems to be getting close to a person that I don't think he should be close to. The first thing the person does is ask him to sell him his dinner tray. And Isaiah does a good job of kind of negotiating that, so to be friendly but not too friendly. I'll be interested to see what happens there. And then I'm going to be interested to see what happens between Barbara and Tammy, because they seem to be reconciling, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last.
All right, well, that's it for this episode of Inside 60 Days. For more of our 60 Days in coverage, go to newsandtribune.com/inside60days. To ask our panelists your own questions, tweet at News and Tribune with the hashtag Inside60Days. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you, Reverend, for joining us today. And thank you to the Jeffersonville High School students behind the cameras. Thank you, and have a great weekend.